Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thriving Through Troubled Water Summit again for another special time with another very special guest I have with me today. I'm Julie Kay, helping you find your way. I am the host of this summit, and I just am so grateful to be able to do this and have God's grace to do this and His strength to do this. And we really hope that you will really come to a new place in your grieving process. That's what we're talking about today is grief. So we really hope to empower you, but comfort you, give you peace maybe where you haven't had peace, give you hope, give you ways to cope and move through your grief and to become a thriver on the outside of that. And we are thankful that you're here because you're a survivor, but we hope that you will learn more and more to become a thriver, which is really just learning to grow through it and learning to embrace, but work through it and past it and never fully get over it. We don't try to say that, just to really come out moving in a good direction, in a positive direction, a healthy direction, and where you can maybe even help others eventually, which is what I am working on doing with the loss of my daughter and letting go of my grandkids. And so we're gonna talk about not just death, but some other things today too, because loss is bigger than even just death, although death is huge. Death of a loved one is big. So I have with me today Gary Rowe. Welcome, Gary.
Hi, Julie. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for coming on here and doing this with me. And I know your heart is, you have a heart of gold. That's what I sense. And I'm very honored. So before I have Gary share some of his story, which is, I've read some of it and it's pretty huge, a lot of this stuff. And that's why we went with the topic of multiple losses, how to cope, hope, and heal through multiple losses. So before I have him do that, I'm going to share a little bit about him. And he is the multiple award-winning author of 20 books, and including a few of them are the Grief Guidebook, Comfort for Grieving Spouse's Heart. And he has several along that line, and Teen Grief and Shattered, Surviving the Loss of a Child, which I need to get. His books have won 4 international book awards, and he has been honored as the finalist 8 times. He has been featured in Dr. Laura, The Daily Positive, Wellness, Belief, Met, Thrive Global, and other, as well as other ones. He is a very trusted and compassionate voice in the grief recovery. He currently serves as a writer, speaker, and grief specialist in Texas, which I'm going to Texas in November, yay. I was actually born there, so don't know much about it though. He's known for his engaging style and sense of humor, which is great. And he's a popular speaker at a wide variety of venues, and you can find him at garyrowe.com. So again, welcome, Gary. Feel free to share some of your story that kind of leads you into your present life and mission.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Yep. It's amazing. People ask me, it's kind of funny when people ask me, meet me for the first time and say, what do you do? I'm like, I have to think about that now. And I say, I have the best job in the world. I get to meet people at some of the most vulnerable times in their lives when they're really hurting, and hopefully be able to be an instrument in guiding them to a better place through that and helping them heal and grow. And then people look at me like I'm crazy, what are you talking about? But anyway, and then they say, how in the world did you get into grief stuff? Well, it's been said that our greatest pain often, or our biggest wounds often become our calling in many ways. And so for me, I lost large chunks of my childhood to the evil of sexual abuse. It happened early on, multiple perpetrators, and all the perpetrators were family members, including one parent. Now, having said that, I had one parent who was very stable, and I had family members who were great. So it was a real mismatch, so to speak. My parents' marriage was very volatile, very dysfunctional. I never knew what I was going to get when I was home. Things were very explosive. I have one brother who was 14 years older than I am, so we're kind of both only children. He experienced a number of losses, friends in the Vietnam War, a girlfriend in a car accident. We had numerous family members that we lost, from the time I was 3 until the time I was about 15. I never really knew either one of my grandfathers because they both passed by the time I was 6. One grandmother never knew who I was because of dementia. And so my mom had been drifting into mental illness for a number of years, Julie. And one of the results of that was, looking back, she isolated us from the healthy part of our family, which was my dad's side of the family, or the healthier part. You know, no family's totally healthy, but the healthier family. And so it was an isolated sort of environment in childhood. I lost a best friend at the age of 12, 7th grade. He sat right in front of me in homeroom, and he never came back from Christmas break. He died of spinal meningitis over the break. And that's the first time that I can remember kind of asking the question, why? Now, what was interesting was right about that time, a little before that time, my heart was really stirred. You know, I was a lonely kid. I was an isolated kid, but I always knew that God existed. But I came to the point where it's like, well, if he exists, I need to know who he is, because this is, I've got some challenges going on here.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I need some help. And so one of my parents drove me down to the biggest church in town, dropped me off in the back. You know, I got all dressed up for it and everything. And I walked in, didn't know anybody. Some nice little lady who I called her a little old lady at the time. She was probably 25, you know, but, you know, she led me to a 6th grade Sunday school class. And I got to know some of the guys in there, and that started my experience of seeking after God. And about a year later, I came to a clear knowledge of what Jesus Christ had done for me. And I thought, this is a no-brainer. I am going to trust him. And I did. So I became a believer, I became a Christian at about the age of 11 and a half. So Jesus lived in me during this loss of my best friend. And then soon after that, by the way, for those of us who think we trust Jesus and everything gets better, excuse me, you know, things for me got much harder. But it wasn't because of Jesus. It's just, I'm glad I knew him when I did, because oh my, I could not have handled this, what's coming up, without him. My parents separated and divorced when I was 13. By default, I stayed with mom, the unhealthy parent. And anyway, it did not work out well. She had a mental breakdown, was put into psychiatric care, and I bounced over and lived with my dad for 6 months. It was great. It was very functional. It was very calm. And then one Sunday afternoon, he dropped in front of me of a heart attack. Never regained consciousness and died a week later. They kept him alive on life support for a week. After my dad's death, I can remember thinking to myself, sitting at the funeral, well, that's it. My life as I know it is over, because mom's about to get out of psychiatric care, which she did. And she came to live in the apartment my dad and I lived in. She wasn't any more stable than she was before. She made a suicide attempt and wound back up in psychiatric care. And this 15-year-old me, who had a hardship driver's license, as they called it at the time, so I was mobile. And thankfully, I was a competitive swimmer, and I was very involved in my high school. So I had no time to get into trouble. And I already had this routine. I was used to feeding myself. I was used to doing all of those things. And so I kind of flew under the radar for a little while. And thankfully, swimming had connected me with other kids growing up and other families. And one of those families ended up showing up at my door, telling me to pack my bags, which I did. And I went over to live with them the last 3 years of high school. And that experience changed my life. I went from a kid who knew who Jesus was and had a relationship with him to suddenly being in an environment of people who took him seriously and were attempting to follow him. And I experienced what it was like for him to love me through other people. And that was huge. So in that experience of high school, I came to the conclusion, okay, I'm going to get hit in life. This is not going to be easy. This is not going to be smooth. And I'm under no illusions about that. And so I've got to figure out a way to handle the hits of life. And not only that, but if I believe that God is real, that Jesus is real, that I can't handle those hits on my own. He must enable me to do that. And secondly, I just don't want to handle the hits. Is there a way to turn them around and use them for good somehow? And I realized, well, God's the only one who can do that. In fact, he's the expert at it. So I have to walk closely with him and allow him to do this in and through me. Now, as a 16-year-old kid, I had no idea what that meant. Not a clue. And you might think, wow, that's a real together teen there. No, 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 no. I was a mess, folks. I was an absolute mess. I just knew Jesus, and I was beginning to heal and grow. Went to college, studied psychology, go figure. And after college, my entire adult life has really been, I find myself surrounded by hurting, grieving people looking to heal and grow, just like me. And that led to me becoming a college minister and then a missionary in Japan for a number of years, and then a pastor for 2+ decades. Of course, you never stop being a pastor. So even when I got into hospice work about 12 years ago as a hospice chaplain and grief counselor, I was still doing pastoral work on the side on Sundays at smaller congregations. And I wish I could say, wow, I've had no more losses in my life since college. But no, I've lost friends. I've lost more family members. I lost my one surviving parent, and I lost my older brother 2 months ago now.
Wow.
And as well as about 10 years ago, I went through a divorce that I did not want or agree with. And there are other losses that I've experienced in my adult life that threatened to be completely debilitating. And they were certainly debilitating for a little while. And so all the principles have remained true. As long as I walk closely with Jesus, that's all that life is really about. It's not about making sense about things, because I could just spin mentally on that all day long. It's about walking with him and somehow letting him make sense of things to me if he wants to, but to heal and grow and continue to love the people around me and help them overcome adversity and turn their pain into purpose somehow. So that's basically me, Julie.
I'm so sorry you went through so much. That's so big. And yet I'm so blessed and encouraged by, that you, like you said, you've just not got stuck. I mean, you did, I'm sure at times, but then you've learned how to not stay stuck and keep moving forward and helping others, which I'm sure you can share about that and what that's done for you, because when you help others. So I definitely want you to share on that. But that's, how do you cope and heal through multiple losses, ongoing, just ongoing, like you said, it's stop. And, it's, I don't know why I'm thinking of Rocky or whatever, like, get up again, or whatever. I mean, it's, we love that movie, right? It's such a, iconic movie or whatever. But that's what we got to do in life with all this. It doesn't have to be physical. It's all the mental. It's our brain, it's our thinking. So, I want you to share what were those key things. And you've already shared a little bit of them, and it's Jesus. And I totally agree with you. Without him and without my dependence on him and without my trust in him, I could not do this summit. I could not do it's like if my story last year, which it will be brought out some point in the summit, was a huge thing for me. That was enough for me to go through. But I look at that whole story, but then on the other side of it, I still went forward in some personal ministry and goals that God had me go through, and I didn't quit. And I still, like you said, I sought to help others, and have some workshops and so forth. And it's like, wow, how did I do that?
How did that happen?
How did that happen, along with trying to get my grandkids and then having all, how did that happen? God, definitely my dependence on God and my trust in him and knowing his word, standing on his word. So without going on with that, share more. How did you do this? How are you here today still?
Oh, goodness. I think the key thing, we've already talked about walking with Jesus. Maybe I better define what that means. For me, I'll tell you what it meant for me. It meant just immersing myself in the Bible and in his word, because people say all the time, God never speaks to me. And then my next question to them is usually, well, do you read your Bible? And they say, well, no, because it's a little difficult and I don't really understand it. And I said, well, no wonder you don't sense God speaking to you. No offense, because see, he's already spoken, and he speaks through what he's already spoken. He speaks in other ways too, in nature, etc. But if we really want to know what to do, what he's thinking, his approach to things, he's told us. And so all we need to do is mine that from this incredible gold mine we have in the Bible. And so that's the first thing. The second thing for me was other people have always been huge in my healing and growth process. I did not, there's this phrase that we stand on the shoulders of all who have gone before us. There's that phrase. And missionary in Japan, me for a number of years, it's interesting that when you say thank you to a Japanese person, their standard response is "okange-sama de." And "okange-sama de" really means in your shadow, literally. And what they're saying is, oh, no, I didn't really help you at all. We're all in each other's shadow. We're all in this together. And anything that I have done for you, I didn't get there by myself. I got there because of the relationships around me. So that is so true. And one of the things we have to do to heal and grow is get around healthy people who are helpful to us and limit our exposure to unhelpful influences, toxic influences. I don't say toxic people, because I think people can behave toxically from time to time, but I think we need to be careful of labeling someone toxic. But our relationship with them might very well be toxic, and their influence on us might very well be toxic. And let's just admit it, we are all influenced greatly by what we're around and who we're around, by what we choose to expose ourselves to. We can't unsee something. We can't unhear something. We can't unexperience something. And so a big part of healing and growing through multiple losses is learning how to do what Solomon says in Proverbs 4, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the spring from which everything in your life flows. So it's all important. Above all else, guard your heart. Well, how do you do that? One way, immerse yourself in what God has said. What has God said? What has God said? Secondly, with regard to the world around us, people and influences, attach ourselves and connect ourselves to people who are helpful to us and who are healthier, hopefully healthier than we are, and limit our exposure to the stuff that's just not helpful. Another thing that I think, Julie, is important when you're talking about multiple losses, and especially when they're stacked up together quickly. In other words, multiple deaths or huge changes of some kind in a year period, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Somebody loses a parent, for example, and then they're laid off of their job 3 months later, and then they have a crisis with their teenager soon after that. And all of these are losses. A move is a loss, even if it's a good move. Relational distress, estrangements, divorces. We could go on and on. A loss of a physical ability, an unwanted diagnosis of some kind. All of these are losses. And so if we can think of losses as basically a major change or disruption in our normal, okay, that's usually a loss of some kind. And right now, it's compounded by our world is changing so fast, our heads are spinning. And so we never know what to expect. That catapults us into ongoing grief, just ongoing grief. And we just don't have our own personal losses right now. And what we've got the losses of the nation that we live in, wherever that is this morning. We've got global losses, societal losses. It's just stunning. So when those losses pile up, I think it's important to tackle them one by one. If you don't, it's overwhelming, number one. It's this huge, massive cloud that you don't know what to do with. Forgive me, that old phrase comes to mind, as nasty as it is. How do you eat an elephant? right? One bite at a time. One bite at who's going to eat it anyway? But one bite at a time. And so we pick one loss at a time, and we think about that loss. We work our way through that loss. That brings up, how do you work through a loss? But anyway, the point is, if we can separate these losses and say, okay, I'm gonna deal with the grief about my mom, just for someone who's lost their mother, or my spouse, if it's a spouse, or deal with the grief about my divorce, if that's the case. Or if the most pressing emotional thing is perhaps grief about what's happening in my country right now, whatever that is, then grieve about that first. By the way, it is grief we're experiencing there. It's grief. So one loss at a time. How do you work through losses? I have a little acronym that I use, an acronym anyway, TWA. It used to mean Trans World Airlines, but they're gone, so I'll use it. T stands for talk. Surprise. Talk it out. Talk it out. Talk out loud to yourself. Talk out loud in the car. Talk out loud to someone who values you and won't belittle you, someone that you trust, a safe person. Talking it out is important. I'll share why in a minute. W stands for write it out. WRITE, writing it out. Write it out in a journal, write it out in a notebook, write it out in a letter that you will never send if you're upset with someone or something like that. Write poetry, write stories, write memories, write down frustrations, etc. And then the A, the A of TWA stands for art it out. So doodle it out, draw it out, draw a picture of it, paint, craft. For guys, it's go tear something down that needs to be torn down, or go build something. Guys tend to be project grievers and ladies tend to be relational grievers, but there's a lot of crossover there and there's lots of exceptions. So having said all that, why is that important? Well, the point of TWA is just to get the grief out. Because if we don't get the grief out, it remains right here and it circles, and then it controls our lives, controls our thinking, controls our behavior, etc. Getting it out, and keep getting it out. As we get it out, it really helps. Now, just thinking about it isn't enough, because our thoughts travel at light speed. We have to have methods like talking, writing, or drawing, etc., to slow our minds down so we can actually get out some of what's going on in here. Now, if we can do that, we can just take one loss at a time and say, I'm going to TWA about this. Now, most people talk and write and don't do much art, but some other people do a lot of art and not a lot of writing and not a lot of talking. So whatever fits you the best. However, I will say this, all three are important, even for people who say, I can't draw. Well, you're not going to give it to a gallery. You're not going to try to sell this piece or whatever you're doing. You're just trying to get your grief on paper or out in front of you some kind. So as you yourself talk, write, and art, surround yourself with healthy people, limit exposure to influences that aren't helpful, do what you can to guard your heart. And here's the most important part for me, is that let God guide this process. Jesus Christ is the ultimate grief companion. No one understands grief the way he does. No one has experienced the pain, the loss, the abuse, the torture, the rejection, the betrayal, the list goes on and on. He personally knows about all of this. And because he is God, he has the capacity to feel what you feel right now and what you're feeling all the time. He is the only one who really gets it. And so if we make sure that he is our ultimate grief companion in all of this, he can empower us to do these things. And you know what? The healing we can experience can be extraordinary. Now, having said all that, one more thing, and you mentioned it, Julie. Getting outside of ourselves while we're grieving is so important. Serving someone else, serving somebody else, doing something outside of ourselves to deliberately love and encourage, to express kindness to other people is massive. When we do that, I really believe this, we heal a little bit. Because what we're saying is, I am not going to let the pain become me. I'm not going to let myself become the pain. I'm not going to let it rule my life. It's real. I'm going to feel it and move through it with Jesus. But that doesn't mean that Jesus can't still empower me to love. You know, scripture says, you know, this is why I delight in weakness, so that Christ's power has to do this. There is an intimacy with Jesus that happens in pain. And when we use pain for good, that can't be had anywhere else. I really believe that.
Wow, that's awesome. I totally agree. In fact, before I got on with you today, that's one of my favorite declarations. It's one of my favorite things from his word to speak out of my mouth is, in my weakness, he is strong. And then I realized that passage says a little more, like you said, that I can glory. I can, like, I don't know, what's a more modern term for that? I can be proud or confident that I am weak, that I'm weak. Yeah, that I'm confident that I'm weak, because then his power can rest on me. He can work through me because I'm not in the way with my pride and thinking I can do it all on my own. I'm relying on him, and that allows his perfection, his perfect love, his perfect power to flow through me. Right.
Yeah.
And I know you get that. And the other verse that is one of my favorite verses that I may actually use to be maybe my main verse for this whole summit is 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3-4, which says, the God of all empathy, comfort, and consolation. And, you know, you can get even more words. He, you know, that we're thankful for him because he comforts us. He is there to comfort us, and that we would then be able to comfort others. And it's a bigger verse than that, but that's my paraphrase of it. But I love that. And I'm sure that's one of the ones you live by.
You're absolutely right. Our personal healing is never about us. And it is never to be restricted to us. You know, everything that we heal, we pass it on, right? That's what this is. Oh my goodness. Yes.
This is, well, in like you said, when we're in that, you know, especially when certain losses hit us more than others, and we can never compare, because everybody's affected differently. We're all unique, and our stories are all unique. The whole package of our life outside of us is all unique. But at the same time, you know, when we feel that, like, so much pain or so much overwhelm, you know, devastation, all those kind of words we could use, that's when we think we can't do anything, and we're paralyzed, or we're stuck, or just frozen, or whatever word you want to use. But that's when, like you said, I mean, pushing ourselves to everything you just said, to begin to just write it out. Make yourself, because it's not like you want to talk it out. Find somebody safe to talk it out. Go to one of those 3 avenues to start with, like you said, get the ball rolling in a sense. And definitely be careful who you reach out to, that hopefully it's somebody that is not going to shut you down or discount what you're going through, because that's not what you need. And then, you know, being able to then, like you said, step out and do something for somebody, you know. And when you get that ball rolling, it grows and grows and grows. I mean, I can see that happening with me, because doing this summit, literally, how I didn't realize, I've never been in a total depression, but I was in a mild depression. And part of it's because I thought I wasn't supposed to talk about my daughter or my grandkids anymore. I'm like, nobody gets it that I lost my grandkids, so they don't get that's another loss. I mean, some people do, but like, you think like not many people understand that. So it took the TEDx videos that I started watching to help me to, you know, validate, because people are like, you know, you need to talk about them, and you should talk about them. And you don't have to necessarily talk about their death all the time, talk about their life, you know, So that broke me out of a depression, and just moving forward into the summit, which is huge, has totally got me, you know, in a place of healing. And I've received more healing just by reaching out and putting together something, hopefully, that is going to be a blessing to many people. So thank you for everything you shared. TWA, I'm going to remember that. Talk it out, write it out, and art it out.
Art it out. I know.
Yeah.
It's not really a verb, but hey,
create
we
something.
can use that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Create something, or get it out on paper, because and that is so good. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
You
and
bet.
Gosh, and Gary has, I just want to mention a couple of your other books, just a few, because you have a lot. but he has couple books on widows, really, because, right? Yeah, because I saw two
Yes,
different titles.
widows or widowers, either one.
Yes. So, and then one's called Grief Walk, which is one that I got. And I wish I would have had it a year ago, because it would have been perfect, like in the thick of the grief, and it's just a really brief daily devotional type thing. And it's like, it starts off with how you feel, and hopefully you'll read it and go, oh yeah, I felt that way, or I feel that way. And then it kind of moves to somebody speaking to you, and then God in his word. And there's always a passage as well in it. And that's a beautiful book. And then Aftermath, about suicide. You have a book on suicide, teen grief. Well, I think I mentioned that one. Surviving the Holidays Without You. I thought that was interesting. And holidays are coming up. So if anybody needs a book about that, that's huge, because everything usually hits us more during the holidays a lot of times, especially if you lost somebody during the holidays. And then be patient on grieving is another one. So those are just a few of them that I wanted to mention too. And then you have a free offer for our audience. Go ahead and share what that is.
Absolutely. It's a brief ebook. I say brief, it's about 40 pages long. It's called Grief, 9 Things I Wish I Had Known. I sat down one day a couple of years ago and I thought, okay, what do I know now about grief and loss that I wish I had known way back then? And I came up with 9 things that I think you're going to resonate with each one of them. But most people who read this ebook say, what I hear more than anything else is, oh, I'm not crazy. I get it. I'm getting hit by all of these things. This is normal and this is common. And then in the book, I also kind of say, here's some ways to deal with that too. So you can simply get it, and Julie will tell you how. But I think it'll be helpful for you.
Yes. I got it, and I thought it was great. And it's like, right, like it helps you to begin to definitely see that you're not alone, and that this is normal, and begin to identify some of the things that you're dealing with. And then from there, you can go forward with getting more help, which I encourage people to do. And Gary's a great resource for that, and his books are a great resource. I'm a life coach, and that is what we're here to help people with. So thank you so much for that. And the way you get to it, which you probably have all heard before, but make sure our audience knows, is to hit the button below the video that you're watching right now, and it'll bring you right in to get that freebie that is a blessing. Thank you. That's a wonderful thing to give away to the public. And so thank you so much. This has been awesome. Such an honor again to have you and to meet you. You're one of the ones I was just like so blessed to find you and meet you, and hopefully we stay connected and see what God does. And so thank you, everybody. I like to do I love you in sign language, because I'm a signer. I love to express with my hands, talk about like writing and talking, like using our hands too, and our bodies, and dance is part of what I do. Yes. So, and that's an art. So that's
an art.
I tend to go with my art. That's my art. So we'll mention that one too. But so welcome. Thank you. And come for our next video. We got more to come. And I hope you all are enjoying this. And definitely sign up for the VIP if you want to get this for lifetime. And you'll be able to hear Gary's interview and what he shared today repeatedly, and all the other ones in case you're missing them. And that's also another button you can click into if you want to. So we're signing off for now. God bless you. Bye, Gary. God bless you.
Bye, Julie. Thank you.